Today, we're going to be talking about the importance of breathing. And it's something I really haven't covered here on the podcast. But what I'm finding more and more is that people are not breathing correctly. And as a consequence, they're having some health issues. We're going to talk about breath as it relates to athletes and really even singers. Today, I have with me a special guest that is going to help us unpack this subject. I have with me Marc Carbone. He is a visionary CEO at PN Medical, specializing in digital health innovation, passionate about 10 times thinking. He is committed to transforming pulmonary therapy and speech pathology. He is a dedicated inventor, technologist, and family man. Mark's leadership drives the creation of groundbreaking medical solutions, and his diverse background includes a BA from UCF, an MBA from Rollins College, and a track record of leadership and innovation. Mark's contributions extend well beyond the business world, and he's been recognized for his influence in the Orlando business community. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you so much for having me.
I really want to dive into the types of products that your company produces, how they help people. But I first of all want to really talk about what is happening in our modern society with our breathing. What is going on there in your opinion?
Well, it's interesting. We've now helped over 2 million people over the years, and I've been in charge for the last 8 years. And it's been eye-opening because I'm 55 now. I joined the company, right after I was 45, and I was fine. I never thought of my breath, never had a second thought about it, that it's just I breathe. And now that I've uncovered so much about the power of breath and if you use it right. And actually, did you know that after age 30 our lung capacity actually starts going down? So we
Wow.
think we're just getting old, we're just diminished, we're just getting slower. No, you're getting less oxygen to your brain, you're getting less oxygen to your limbs. If you don't use it, you will lose it. It's the same for all the 77 muscles around the lungs, because the lungs are just two bags and the heart's right in the middle. It's connected to the left lung. People don't realize it's really one system. And what we do affects the heart and it affects the lungs. So, getting back to modern society, is that, you know, the net result, what I'm seeing is what's happening in society is that, there are some outliers, but the net result is that people are getting sicker and people are not living as long. Like, I'm not supposed to live as long as my parents. Actually, it's this new trend, and it's real. It's the real statistics. And why is that? I'm going to be a little bit controversial here, but some of your guests probably know this, is that big pharma, big food, big healthcare are in the business to make money. They are not in the business to make us better. They don't. Processed food, it makes it actually processed food. If you read the book Breathe by James Nestor, which I recommend everybody. I'm writing a book. When mine comes out next year, please read mine. But for now, the best breathing book in the world is Breath or Breathe. And you got to get it. It's a quick read. And it even what's happened with processed food is that because you're not chewing as hard as you used to, your mouth and your jaw actually starts going inward. You actually become less attractive. Potentially, your teeth get more crooked. This is all in the last 200 years. It's almost like humans have been de-evolving as we're told that we are evolving. Again, we're getting sicker and we're dying earlier, many more sicknesses than before. And the other part that I've noticed, especially since the pandemic, since COVID, is that our autonomic systems are overloaded. We are stuck in sympathetic state instead of parasympathetic. Sympathetic is your fight, flight, freeze. Parasympathetic is where you need to be more. That's in your recovering. We as humans are not in recovery mode as much. We're not getting enough recovery during sleep or during the day because we're always on. And since COVID, CDC actually reported that I think it's almost 25. The world is 25% more anxious than we were before COVID. So we're all just a little more uptight. And something else I learned during COVID. We're blessed that we do a lot of clinical studies with major institutions, top in the world, including Mayo Clinic. We just finished a 2,000 patient study with people who had COVID or long COVID, and out of it came 2 patents that we just submitted. We learned so much, and part of that goes to this elevated state that we're in, this sympathetic state of pressure, is that the whole world has to reset right now. It's a breathing reset. And I can share it in the talk, or I can share it in the notes for you. But wait, let's turn that phone off. Um, but you know what we learned, one of the big things we learned is that this elevated state everybody was in. So we actually started people with basic breathing exercises, just slow deep breathing, 10 minutes in the morning, 10 at night. You do that for a week to 4 weeks, and you can help reset your autonomic system. So what is the fastest way to alter uh, the heart, blood pressure, alter your mood? It's actually through your breath. And the other thing, because people don't even realize this, one more thing is that as we become adults, it's over 90% of us across the globe actually have some form of dysfunctional breathing. We do not, like when you're babies, when you're born, you actually belly breathe, you breathe properly, but we start breathing higher and higher in our chest as we get older. And check the next time you're checking email or you're on social media, pay attention. You actually start shallow breathing typically. It's most across the board. You're actually putting yourself in a hyperventilating state, which is so bad for you. It puts you in that sympathetic state, that nervous state. You've just got to constantly be aware of this. And just awareness of your breath conquers half the battle. Yes, I do this for a living. We target those specific 77 muscles of respiration and the 125 of posture. We do. But if you just pay attention and just breathe less, breathe slower and deeper, and that alone will make a huge impact on a person. So even if you don't, when we go over what we do, what we've been doing all these years, I want you first to just realize it's really simple. And again, this is one of those free things. It's something that pharma can't get their hands around. So that's why it's not touted as much. So I feel like there's this renaissance. And actually, that's the name of my book. It's Breathing Renaissance. And people, because of COVID, the positive is we're now being more aware of our respiratory system. We've been doing this over 40 years. And when COVID hit, it was a big positive for us because more people around the world notice what we're doing. And again, just being aware of it, because it affects your sleep. It affects it. We actually help with sleep apnea. We lower blood pressure. We affect low energy. There's so many things that happen when you're not getting enough oxygen. And again, until it gets really bad, people don't know that they're not breathing properly. What's interesting, if you just exhale right now and hold your breath, and if you can't hold it very long, just a few seconds, that is a huge telltale sign that you are not breathing properly.
Hmm. You make some interesting points here. I love the awareness because I've noticed that with myself. I've gotten in a habit of when I feel that shallow breathing and that stress, I just stop and take a very deep inhale and exhale. And it's just amazing how it calms me immediately down and I start breathing better. And then also, talking about the hyper palatable food, this fast food, big pharma, big food, I'm in agreement there. We as human beings are meant to chew, and now all of a sudden we're taking in this fast food that, like I said, is hyper palatable. And I had not really considered that connection to breathing. So that was so very interesting to me that you touched on that.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, how does PN Medical, what exactly are the devices? How do they help people? How do they work?
Sure. I mean, I can demo one. I've got the one for actors and singers and public speakers because I speak. So I use Breather Voice, and it's really simple. We have a line for singers and actors. We have one for athletes at the elite level, all the way up to fighter pilots and special force operators, all the way to weekend warriors, triathletes, people that jog, people that bike. Actually, we just started representing a Ironman woman who just won last weekend, so it was really exciting. She uses our athletic model. So and then the big one is the one we've been doing for 44 years. That's for health and wellness. We were birthed out of medicine. So for the last like 37 years or so, we were just medical. And for the last number of years, we've broken into consumer side athletes, people who want to make the second half of their life as strong as the first half or stronger for the first time. So it's really exciting how we now can help people get an edge without using drugs, without any supplements. It's just by strengthening the muscles of respiration and actually learning to breathe again properly. So the device, I've got the breather voice. What it is, for people who can't see, it's got a dial for inhale, a dial for exhale, and they're varying pressures because when you inhale, the pressure that you develop on inhale and exhale is different. So it's independent. You breathe independently from each side, and you set the dials from 1 to 6, and that is the level of intensity. So what you're doing is you're putting a load. It's just like a gym for your lungs and your heart. That's exactly what it is. So I'll do a couple breaths in it. And when you're starting out, you put your hand on your belly because you got to feel your belly moving. You don't want your chest. You want to have a quiet chest, quiet shoulders. Just focus on your core, focus on your trunk. And I know a lot of us hold that stomach in, and it is detrimental to our life. I know we all want flat bellies. I do too. So I sometimes hold my breath to keep that belly in when I'm eating really bad gluten food. I just explode when I eat bread and stuff. But anyway, so you put your hand on your belly. I'm going to do 3 breaths, and you have to hear it, and you just breathe through the device. And again, it's like you're doing barbells for all the muscles around your lungs. And you just do 3 sets in the morning or 2 sets in the morning. Same thing at night, 6 days a week when you're starting. That's building your strength protocol. So you're activating things you have probably not activated. And anyone who's over 70, did you know this? Typically, they don't take a full breath for the rest of their life.
Wow.
So it's amazing. So on first use, you're going to get lightheaded because what you're doing is you're exchanging that CO2 and oxygen in a much more efficient way. And your brain's waking up, your body's waking up. And because, we do a lot on cognition too. So this does affect dementia because, a lot of I think there are 76 forms of dementia. People don't realize that, but it's in the high 70s. And a lot of them are oxygen related. You just keep on getting less and less oxygen to your brain, and that's it. You're done. I mean, you go to brain fog and then it gets worse.
Boy, so interesting. It surprises me that it's such a simple and small device for those that are listening and not watching. It's just this very small portable device. I was picturing something bigger for some reason, and so that's exciting that it's accessible, easy to use, and not time consuming because most of us don't have a lot of time to invest in these things. Now, so they're using the device and they're using it a couple times a day. Is this, I don't want to say you improve your breath and then you're done, or are you on a maintenance plan from there on out?
Oh, that's great. You say that. You start on the strength and then you can move to maintenance. Again, it's a whole set of smooth muscles inside the body. So again, if you're not using it, you will lose it. So it's something you do for the rest of your life. But the good news is you can eventually go to maintenance, unless you're a pro athlete and you have to be on these crazy protocols that we have. But they're doing this for money. I mean, they need to make millions of dollars, so they'll do whatever it takes. But for the rest of us, the maintenance is it can go down to 3 days a week, once a day. So it is not a heavy lift. And the best way to do it is add it to your habits. Do it right after or right before I'd say right after you brush your teeth. If you're going to do it in the morning or at night, because it actually either upregulates you for the morning or it helps downregulate you to get ready for sleep because you're putting yourself in this calm state. You are activating, you have to feel it. So you are getting a little tiny workout. But again, it's it's like shutting the world out for just 5 minutes, and you just get focused on your breath, and that transfer of oxygen, that free transfer of oxygen and CO2 really helps. And you actually see results within a week. It's that
Oh,
quick. So athletes see something within a week. Uh, Now, for the big populations we've been working with for so many years, COPD, chronic heart failure, back injury, dysphagia, which that's swallow disorder, which affects almost 20 million people in the country. So for people with issues where they just have trouble going to check the mail or picking up their grandchild, that's a whole different ballgame. They see major results pretty quickly. But when you're highly athletic, you'll see like a 2% improvement, but that's typically the difference between first place and third place. So it is significant for an athlete too.
I was thinking as you were speaking, I haven't always been in bodybuilding. I used to do marathons and was a regionally and nationally ranked runner for a period of time until I had an injury. But I remember being in marathons where, for those of you who haven't run one, it's like running 2 races. So you run pretty strong, or at least I did for that 20 miles, nice and steady. And then it was always that final stretch. That final 6 miles was like its own race. And you would feel the last mile like your lungs were going to explode, like they're on fire. And that would
Mhm.
be the point. If you didn't watch, somebody come up behind you and pass you because they had something in the tank to get there. And I'm thinking, how would this have helped me? Because I was always looking for that edge and fighting that nausea and losing my breath and that burning in my lungs and feeling like you're
Mhm.
just trying to push through a wall. How would that have helped me improve the race time?
Well, what people don't realize, your diaphragm gives out before your heart and other things. And what happens is God made us to protect ourselves. So when when you're having more trouble breathing, guess what it's doing? It's pulling all the blood from the limbs. Your lactate's going through the roof because your diaphragm, which is a huge umbrella, it's a very big muscle. It has so many implications to the success of life, and people just don't realize it. That when it starts getting compromised, the brain says breathing is more important than whatever you are doing, and it will turn everything off to protect your breath. Now, it's going to also turn your trunk muscles off too, which causes injury because then you make a misstep. And you see it in athletes as soon as they're trunk runners, as soon as that trunk becomes unstable and it moves a little too much, like you see Usain Bolt, his trunk doesn't move. As soon as it starts moving, he's in a trouble. You can tell when a runner's starting to hit that difficulty because the mobility and the function starts leaving them because the body's protecting itself. So, I think I mentioned, we just sponsored a female Ironman, and she just won last weekend. And the
Awesome.
only thing she changed in her training was she added the breather, so she got her best time ever. And if you go to our Instagram, our Breather Fit Instagram, you just search Breather Fit. She should be up there in some of the latest posts. You'll see her, Katie Lance. So pretty exciting, and it does. And we even did a study with Army Rangers because there's something else happening in society too around breath. I call it the big lean. And what's happened over the last 10, 12 years is, I don't know, some people can't see me, but you're just leaned over checking your phone, and you're just sitting there on your phone or your laptop or whatever, and you're compromising your trunk, you're compromising your diaphragm. And what that did is it has affected selection rate, pass rate, to make it to the SEALs and to the Rangers. So a couple years ago, we did a study with the Rangers, and one of the most important things to do besides all the mental is their run times. So it's a 2 mile rucksack. They're holding they have a 60-pound bag on their back, a backpack, and they have to run 2 miles. We had these guys, and what was really neat, all these guys coming in to make it to Ranger School, you saw them, they all looked like bodybuilders. Everybody had like 3% body fat, just amazing physiques, and but when we started testing all their breathing, 90% of them did not breathe properly. So
Wow.
what happened after 4 weeks of using Breather Fit Just learning to breathe properly and then using our device to target the key muscles, because it just targets. It's just, you're like you're doing just like you're doing a barbell. You're in isolation when you isolate your arm. You are isolating and targeting the muscles that matter most to move those lungs, because the lungs are just two bags. They don't do anything. They're not moving. They're not moving air and up and down. It's your diaphragm that's causing the air to go in and out of your body. So that's why it's really important to focus on this. So um, we got their run times down by over 20 seconds in 2 miles. And 20 seconds in 2 miles is pretty far.
It
That's
is.
a lot of yards.
It is. Any little edge you can get makes a huge difference. Really, really interesting. I'm fascinated with this and especially what it can do athletically. I know I have listeners. Yes, most of my listeners are over 50, but they want to play all out. They want to be living strong in the second half of life. Now, what about people that they want to lose weight? How I know we were talking off camera prior to this podcast recording about a study with weight loss. Can you share that with the listeners?
Sure. And when I joined the company 8.5 years ago to run it, I was skeptical because I'm like, how can that little device do that? It just sounds hokey. So I heavily invested in research from like year one, and we do so many studies. So we just finished an obesity study with the breather, uh, and great results. The top line data was out. We just did a press release. The study results will be published in a couple months to the world. And what happened is that you know they've got 50 to hundreds of pounds of extra weight pushing on their heart, pushing on their lungs. I mean, they are struggling just to breathe. And the last thing they want to do is work out. They're not going to the gym, they're not walking. So by introducing our device, by creating, and it's respiratory muscle training, that's what this is. And ours is combined respiratory muscle training because we're using both sides of the breath. And a lot of competitors, we were the first. We created this category 44 years ago, but a lot of them just focus on one side of the breath. That's like lifting a dumbbell and then dropping it. You breathe in and out. You can't just do an inhale. You have to do both sides of the breath. So we work out both sides of the breath. And what we found is that, or actually, wait, let me clarify. Say that again, what you asked.
Oh, the study on the relationship to weight loss.
Yeah, so what the results out now are that the fact that our 5 minutes in the morning or 10 minutes and 5 to 10 at night is the only workout they were getting typically. So by getting more oxygen to the limbs, properly building that diaphragm, they started being more mobile. So as soon as you're moving, as soon as you're up and moving, you are starting to get to the win side of the column. And they lost on average after 8 weeks. They lost 12 pounds. Their BMI went down. Their blood pressure went down. We affect blood pressure significantly. Breathing directly impacts blood pressure. So blood pressure went down for everybody. It was great. Now it was done also with portions. So we teamed up with a big hospital group in Minnesota, and they created portions, which all it is you can eat what you want. You just can only eat so much. Like you eat a cup for breakfast, a cup for lunch and dinner. So it was a very simple program they had. And then they added the breather, and they did this without the breather years ago. So by adding the breather, we added a whole nother level of more weight loss, better BMI, systolic went down as well. And it was just across the board, all the results got better. So it seems simple. What I love about it is that there are some really fancy designer new drugs out for weight loss. And the hottest one on the market now actually attacks the muscles. So you lose weight, but you're losing muscle weight. And guess what's a muscle? Your heart. So it
Mm.
actually affects your heart. So there are going to be class action lawsuits 5 to 10 years from now. And I just love any time we can just get you relying on what God gave you. And He gave us these beautiful specimens. Did you know that, 200 years ago, American Indians and across the world, we had straight teeth. We had beautiful big jaws. Our jaws have all gotten smaller. So we're constricting airflow. That's what I'm saying about the de-evolution. We're de-evolving over the last few decades. because no one is looking out for us. They're just getting money out of our pocketbooks. We have to look out for ourselves. So part of why I joined the company is I feel like I want to make a difference, because my passion is I suffer tremendously from sleeplessness, low energy, and anxiety. So I try to cater our clinical studies. I'm like, I try to always like, can we address anxiety? Can we address low energy? And so it's been really, personally, I've got a lot out of being here at the company, and it's just, it's rewarding.
I really love that you hit on the anxiety piece because that's a big one that I see. I've had anxiety my whole life. It's much better now. I've learned coping mechanisms, but I know exactly what you're talking about, the sleeplessness, the anxiety, the racing thoughts, all of the things. And I see that as a big problem, especially since the pandemic. People are in general, I think, more anxious. And then if they already have a predisposition to that, like me, like you, it's far worse. And that's interesting that really breathing correctly can have an effect on that without drugs.
Oh, and guess what we learned with COVID? Because 10 to 50%, the numbers are crazy, but 10 to 50% of anyone who's had COVID has at least one symptom of long COVID.
Mm,
And this affects women more. Guess what? Women are affected more than men with long COVID. And there are various reasons. Part of it is that it could be the male female dynamic, that a woman is trying to protect herself more than a man is physically, so women are more aware, and just more aware of their surroundings, and they could be doing, they're working, taking care of the kids, making meals more than the men are. Yeah, the men are killing themselves. We're dying early, so we are struggling. We die
mhm,
sooner than women, so our lives are not easy. But long COVID affects females more than males. And it's usually, it's also a personality. So people that are high energy, they want to get things done. And a lot of times a mom has to get everything done. When everybody's sick, like when I'm sick, I'm in bed. When my wife's sick, she's up, she's taking care of the boys. And I'm there crying and like, oh, help, help. It's just so funny. I act so tough, but when I'm sick, I'm not. And a lot of other men are just like me. But you know, part of that is, what I've learned again is that, women are really affected more from this. And let me give you guys one, like, if you take this one tip, it's free and it's quick. It's a couple seconds. Whenever you're feeling you're redlining, or you're overloading, you think you're about to get in an argument, or you're just stressed and you're not, and you're just realizing it. Wait a second, why am I so anxious? Do this one breath, because and what it does, it hits the vagus nerve. When you hit that vagus nerve, instantly down regulates the body. And the vagus nerve gets hit best when there's a sound. So you just inhale from the nose and you exhale from a hum. And everybody who does yoga, that's why the
yep.
yogis do this. Well, that's why you make
Mhm.
that exhale sound, because it actually is, it's tickling that vagus nerve, and it's telling the vagus nerve everything's okay. You can relax. So I'll do it right now because I'm talking a lot, so I'm getting anxious. So you just inhale from the nose, exhale from the nose, or exhale doing the hum. And my body went down, my shoulders went
Mhm.
down. I instantly relaxed. So this is a 3 second or 4 second instant down regulator.
And it's so simple. I mean, that is very similar to what I do when I get that anxiety. I make a very vocal vocal hum on that exhale, and I do yoga, so I definitely know what you're talking about. That's a big part of it and how it works, and it just releases that tension, just boom, like that. So it's
Yeah.
such a great tip. Thank you. I wanted you touched on women being more vulnerable to the effects of long COVID. Do you find differences, and just in general, not even with the long COVID, but with men and women and breathing, and more difficulties for one than the other?
That is a great question. So from what we know, if I had my chief scientist, she could give you a better answer. So I can find out and put it in your notes. What I've seen, she might have a different opinion, is it seems like both sides are suffering. I feel like females address it sooner than a male will. and he'll just grunge and think that's just life. He's just getting slower and he's dying, or he's just not as who he used to be. Women seem to be a little more proactive about it. So it seems like they do better. Um, but I feel like it's across the board. Whoever is not aware of their breath is going to pay a price. And again, watch when you do this right now too. Look at yourself in the mirror, take a deep breath, and don't think about it. See if your shoulders go up. See if your chest goes up too far and your stomach's just sitting there. Another thing we see, this is crazy. When I tell somebody to inhale, it's a balloon. Your stomach's supposed to go up a little bit. Now, the diaphragm affects all the way to the backbone. That's why we help people with back injury and paralysis, because the diaphragm connects from the front to the back. It's this gigantic parachute that separates, that it's right in the middle of the trunk. It's a really important area.
So, with men and women, really both of us are struggling, but in different ways. And I would agree with you. I see how I handle stress and how my breathing is affected, and I have more awareness. My husband is go, 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 solving problems all day. Not that I'm not, but he is really in the trenches doing a physical job. And I think internalizing and so not really aware maybe that his breathing is shallow or that he's stressed. So I think that I think we do process things differently. There was something else I wanted to touch on here, and that is our youth. Do you think in your studies, in your experience, that younger people are having more breathing difficulties now than they did in the past, say even 10, 20 years ago?
Yeah, great question. I touched on it a little bit a few minutes ago, but we actually saw this from the military. Did the studies that selection rate, even the regular forces, Navy, Army, uh, they are not getting as fit of 18-year-olds. They just aren't making it. They're not making it through the simple basic training. They have sadly reduced the requirements of basic training because they just couldn't get enough people to pass. So this is serious. I think this is a pandemic. Obesity is on the rise. Diabetes everything's on the rise. So young young kids are being affected, and I would say it is at the most basic level. It is technology. It is sitting on their phones. They're just sitting so much and they're crouched over. Worst thing you can do for your core. You can't be crouched. You gotta have a strong presence, a Superman stance. Be at least close to that. Good posture matters because posture's way off, and it is causing very minute, and you can't see it because they're young. You're not seeing it as much. You won't notice it until they're over 30, because your lung capacity actually goes down after age 30. So if you're not continuing and really doing really strong yoga, or not using a device like ours, and you're strengthening your respiratory system, you actually start losing lung capacity every single year till death. So again, that speaks to, oh, I'm just getting old. I can't work out like I used to. I can't walk as far. We can address that by strengthening your lungs. So longevity. But kids, yes, kids, kids are in trouble. They're just getting too overweight. They're too lethargic, and they're not breathing properly. Just addressing breath. I mean, I've got a 5-year-old, 11 and 13. My 11 and 13 are now pre-Olympic surfers, and their secret weapon is they've been using our athletic device for 2 years now, both of them. So they can hold their breath longer, they can swim longer, they have more endurance than their competitors, and they're just stronger. You can't tell, they're not bigger. I'm not big, my kids aren't big, but they have a stronger lung capacity. So they definitely can outdo any of the non-athletic other kids their age. And they're beating all the other athletes too. But jumping on to longevity, having that second half of your life be as good as your first half or better. If you're not moving oxygen in an efficient way, it is at a core. Every major disease, there is an oxygen inefficiency going on. Every single major disease there is a problem with how you're moving your oxygen and your CO2. So that's key. And when you're moving that oxygen, it's affecting a lot of things. So there are three predictors of longevity. It's VO2 max,
Hmm.
it's HRV, which is variable heart rate, and then it's your lung capacity. And why lung capacity is so easy to monitor when people get lung transplants, the people who get bigger lungs than they had live longer than the people who got smaller lungs. So if anyone's about to get a lung transplant, please ask. I know you can't be selective, but ask for somebody with big lungs if you possibly can, because it's going to make you better. So anyway, HRV. So using our device, and this is interesting too. So sleep apnea, snoring. Did you know how you breathe during the day affects 100% how you breathe during the night? Because we're taking 25, 30,000 breaths a day. So you're taking almost like 18,000 breaths before you go to bed. And if your habit is to breathe improperly, why on earth would you start breathing properly when you fall asleep? You're going to keep breathing that
Hmm.
improper way and not getting the proper movement of your gases. So it does, and that affects HRV. So when you're getting the proper oxygen intake and outtake, it does affect sleep. It does affect HRV, and now we're seeing the HRV more. I'm wearing the Aura Ring, of course, the Apple Watch. A lot of
Hmm.
the devices now are tracking your HRV, and just watch that because you have to watch the trend because none of them. I don't think there's a single. I think there's one now that truly tracks it, but how they get away with it is it's trending. So that trend line over days and weeks is something you need to watch because if your HRV every month keeps on going down, there's something wrong. You have to figure out what's up because it's a predictor of health, it's a predictor of sickness, oncoming sickness, and how long you're going to live.
Absolutely. I think it's important to note too, as you were speaking, I was thinking of this HRV, such an indicator of longevity, VO2 max. But I'm thinking about how people get injuries, they get joint injuries. So, for instance, I have two back injuries, and I can't go all out with cardio the way I used to. I can't be jumping around doing these box jumps. I used to do box jumps from, box to box to box, high impact cardio boxing. I can't do it. My back won't take it. So I have this challenge of knowing, yes, my VO2 max is important, but not being able to push as hard as I need to. So I was thinking how great it is to have something that would exercise your lungs without that impact on your body.
And you know what? Professional athletes love it because it's no impact because they're always having to recover.
Hmm.
And I was just at the Lake Nona Human Performance Institute, and they're going to start carrying all our stuff. And that is the key now. All pro athletes, whoever recovers faster wins. And if you're stuck in a bed or you do have an injury, you are going to be able to affect 200 plus muscles in your trunk by doing this. Again, if you took all your skin and your bones off, you'd watch all the muscles moving while you're breathing under a load. So that's what it is. You're breathing under a load through the device. It's creating pressure on inhale and exhale. And we notice this in the hospital. So when you're in the ICU, within 24 hours, your diaphragm starts getting compromised. It actually starts weakening in 1 day. So if you can't do what you used to do, this is a way to get a little bit back. So if you can't do your box jumps, this at least is acting like you're doing something very strenuous. But when you're done, you actually feel better because you actually feel smarter and just more aware and more alert after you do every session because your body just said thank you for all that proper oxygen exchange.
Oh yeah, there's nothing like getting that intensity because I remember how that felt running and doing the box jumps. And yes, I do cardio now, but it's not the same. So it's great to know that there is something to help. Now, if someone wants to purchase one of your devices, how do they need a doctor's prescription? What do they need?
They can get most all the devices by just searching for the breather.
Hmm.
Just go online and search for the breather. There are counterfeits and knockoffs, so you make sure you notice us. We're PN Medical. but it is called the breather. And when you find that, you'll find, if you are an athlete, you'll find breather fit. If you're a vocalist or an instrumentalist or actor, you'll find breather voice. And then for all the people who just want general health and wellness, or you are highly compromised, COPD or asthma or chronic heart failure or stroke, then you'll go for the breather. So just search the breather.
Okay. And then the sleep apnea that you had also touched on, that would be more for the health, correct?
Well, good news. All the devices have the same effect. The athletic and the performing devices are just harder to use. It's a stronger pressure, and then it's different protocols. They have more. They do more. They have to do more in their protocols, and then the devices are a little more difficult to use. That's the only difference. So it's up to you if you feel. And the cool thing is, if you used to be an athlete and you're like, wait a second, why do I have to get this device? You can get the athletic device. You're just going to be on level one, and it's just going to be harder for you to get up to the top level, which is very hard to get to. It's really hard to get to the highest level, but that's it. You just search for the breather.
Okay, wonderful. Mark, I so appreciate you coming on the show. This has been really fascinating. I've learned a lot, and I think what you're doing some important work. And so I so much appreciate you coming on. And as we wrap up, was there anything I didn't ask that you want to say? And how can the listeners get a hold of you?
I think it's just remember that one breath. And two things. If you're focusing on your breathing, when you're checking email, or so when you're checking email, watch your breath. Look yourself in the mirror, take a breath without thinking, watch what your body does, try to keep a real calm upper body, and just let your stomach be free. And do that one breath, the sigh. If everybody can remember those three things, that's a great start.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Such good advice. Simple, and we need simple these days. We don't need
Yeah,
complicated for sure.
yeah.
So I'll make sure your contact information is in the show notes if they want to purchase the products and ask questions. And thank you again, Mark. I really do appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you for what you do. Thank you so much.
And to our listeners, wherever you are in the world, we wish you every blessing. Bye for now.